everyone, I'm Whitney and I'm back today with a Sew Your Stash update for the spring months. If you don't know what Sew Your Stash is, it is a challenge that I started a couple years ago to try to look first at your stash fabrics, your stash notions, stash patterns, whatever you have in your stash, and look to those first when starting a new project instead of running right out to the store and purchasing whatever you need for that project, and then the things in your stash just keep sitting there and sitting there and sitting there for months and years, and you know, they just keep accumulating and never getting used. So the whole point of the challenge is to just try to use up some of those things that we've been hanging on for way too long. So yeah, I am here today with a little progress report on what I used my stash for in the last 3 months. If you're interested in more videos on this, the original challenge video and then the updates that I've done along the way, I'll have all of them linked in a playlist that you can find in the video description. It's really fun to see how much I've been able to do in the past year or two, or however long this has been going on. I can't even remember now. But some of my original goals were to use fabrics that I don't usually gravitate to, which is like my decorator fabrics and things like that I don't really use on a regular basis. I also want to use more of my sewing patterns because I have like over 400 of them now, and I want to be using more of those. So as I go along, I will tell you how I did in some of those areas. So the first project that I made since my last update video was actually a pretty challenging one, I think. Our stroller that we use for my youngest daughter when we go to events that are like all day, or if we go to the zoo or something like that, we do still take our jogging stroller so that if she gets tired of walking around, we have something that she can sit in. And the little undercarriage portion of it where you can put a bag or your lunch or whatever had started breaking, and it was just tearing off. So we went to the medieval fair a few months back. The first day we got there and realized that the bag was about at the end of its life, and we rigged it up enough for it to work that day, but we got home that night and was like, this is not working anymore, and we still had 2 more days, like all day at the medieval fair. So that night I stayed up really late and I dug through my upholstery fabrics, my corduroys, my pleathers, and I pulled out some of them, and I cut the old little bag portion off of the stroller and used it as kind of a rough template to make a new one. So I used some brown pleather for the bottom side, and then I used tan corduroy for the rest of it, and was able to make a new bag that worked really, really well. I made it a little bit too long, so to speak, so like it hangs down a little lower than it probably should. So if we hit a bump or something, it drags, but it is still far better than the one that was on there before because it was tearing so bad. But I was able to use some of those fabrics that I have stored out in the storage building because that's how seldom I reach for them, and I was able to make something that is so practical and so necessary for our not day-to-day life, but you know, when we go to different things where we need to use the stroller. So it has been so wonderful that this has been fixed and is usable again. So that was a huge win in my book on sewing stash and making something that is so practical and needed. Also, for the medieval fair, I made my daughter a mermaid skirt. I had this shiny, like metallic green skirt that I had thrifted several years ago, and when I bought it with the intention of making a mermaid tail or mermaid costume or something from it, because that is just like what it screams. And for the medieval fair, both my daughters love seeing the mermaids there, so I dug this skirt out of my clothing to be cut up box, and I made a little skirt for my daughter, and she loved wearing it and showing it off to the mermaids and saying, I have a mermaid tail too, you know. So that was another thing out of my stash. Then after the medieval fair ended, a lot of things happened around medieval fair time. After it ended, I was inspired to work with some of my leather stash. So I have a very large bag of leather scraps and things that I've picked up at Hobby Lobby. They have different grab bag type things, and then also at our local Tandy Leather I had gotten a grab bag at one point where you could fill up a bag for a certain dollar amount, and I had done that. So I came home from the last day of the medieval fair, or the second to last day? I don't remember. The second or third day I came home and I decided to make some leather pouches. So I went through my leather stash and I made a pouch inspired by one I had actually seen at the medieval fair and turned out really well. And then I made another one and I did it, a tutorial for you all for it. So there is a tutorial on that. And by the way, anything that I mentioned that there is a tutorial for, I will link to that in the description box as well, so they're easy for you to find. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I don't do a whole lot with leather, so anytime I get to actually use it for a project, it is really fun and exciting. So after that, it was time for my youngest daughter's 3rd birthday, and she wanted a Minnie Mouse party. So following suit of what I did for my oldest daughter, I made some fabric bunting for the decoration at her birthday party. I used some different fabrics from my stash, as well as one that I did purchase that had Minnie Mouse on it. I made a cute little fabric bunting to hang up on the wall behind where the presents and cake and stuff was. I do have a tutorial that is several years old for that, and my daughter loved it. We left it up for like an extra month after the party because she just loved how it looked. And I also made her a skirt to wear to the party that was kind of Minnie Mouse inspired, and she really loves wearing, both my daughters love wearing skirts, so anytime I make a skirt for them, they just love it and wear it constantly. So I did do that using stash fabric, and then I also made her a t-shirt quilt. So I did 3 different projects centered around her birthday that all used stash of some sort. For the t-shirt quilt, I had been collecting t-shirts for a long time. Some of them are ones that I used to sleep in, and then other ones are ones that I had just picked up at thrift stores, intending on using them for a project, and that project just never happened. And then once my daughter started really getting into Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse, I knew I wanted to use those shirts for something for her. So I used that whole pile of t-shirts from my stash to create a really cute t-shirt quilt, and then I did purchase the fabric for the backing because I wanted a sweatshirt knit for the backing, because it is heavy enough and cozy enough that it allows you to finish the quilt like a blanket, and you don't have to do batting and stuff, but it is still nice and kind of has that heavy blanket feel and is cozy. So I have the t-shirt quilt tutorial that I'll link, as well as a separate video showing how you can finish any sort of blanket top or quilt top like a blanket, and it is a really easy process, and yeah, it still makes a really nice finished blanket if you don't want to go about quilting something. Speaking of that blanket tutorial, I used some pieces from my stash for that. I used a pre-made quilt top that I had picked up several years back on clearance at Walmart. And I also had a little just cheap fleece blanket that I had picked up on clearance at the same time, and they had been in my stash for a long time. I knew that I was going to do a tutorial showing how to use both of those to make a very simple blanket, and I just held on to them for a very, very, very long time, because at our old house I didn't have a location that worked well for larger projects, like for filming larger projects, and anywhere that I had enough space to do that at our old house had terrible lighting, and it was just so bad. So now that we're in our newer house, and I have a space where I can set my camera up and film large projects, and it looks, you know, fairly nice. So I am really trying to bust out some of those larger projects that I've had planned for so long. also did several different bags during this past couple months. I have my drawstring bag with the circle bottom. I really love this one. The inspiration for it was something that my daughter got for her birthday. She got some princess figurines, and she also got some Minnie Mouse figurines, and I knew I wanted to make a bag for her to keep them all in. So since I have been wanting to make a bag with a circle bottom for so long, I knew it was the perfect time to practice that out, you know, practice the technique and figure it all out, and then do a tutorial for you all. So I made a bag that has Minnie Mouse on it first, and I made that for my daughter, and she's actually using it to hold her toys right now. And from doing that one, I made sure I had everything, like the measurements and technique and everything, figured out. And then I made another one using some dinosaur fabric. That is what I used for the tutorial. So all of that used stash fabric, and the dinosaur fabric is actually one I've had for a while that I have been saving up because it is just so cute and I didn't know what to use it for. I actually have that problem a lot. I have some cute fabrics I've had for years, and some of them I've had them so long that now they don't even really appeal to me that much because I've seen them over and over and over and over because I bought them and thought, oh, I love this so much, I don't want to cut into it. So I just have been holding on to it, and I've seen it so much now that I don't even love the fabric anymore. So I should have just used it in the first place and made something I enjoyed, but now I just have it hanging around. So I really need to come up with some projects that I can use some like larger bright prints for that I've had for so long. But the dinosaur fabric was one of those, but I managed to use it before I got to that point of, oh, I don't even love it anymore. But some other bags that I made during this time was the produce bags for the zero waste grocery store bags that were the drawstring, and they had the double gauze material. I have several prints in a double gauze fabric that a lovely viewer sent to me. She's such a kind, sweet lady, and I didn't know what to do with them, so I used some for that tutorial, but I still have quite a bit of it left that I need to figure out a project that I can do with them. By the way, I apologize that the air conditioner has run this whole video up until now. I tried to turn it off before I started filming and it kicked right back on, so I apologize for that. I know it is not super pleasant to listen to. But anyway, so I need to make more of the produce bags for sure because I don't have enough of them. And then I made another bag, which is my most recent tutorial, and it was the project bag, the drawstring project bag that I absolutely love. I love the fabric, I love how it turned out, and it's just perfect. I absolutely love it. So if you have not seen that tutorial already, you definitely should go check it out. It is a very, let's see, it's one of those projects that looks harder than it is. So it looks like it should be complicated. It looks like it has pieces of cut to all different sizes, but I was able to figure out how to make all of the bag body pieces. So there's 6 different pieces that are cut to the same size. So the only other thing you have to worry about is the straps. And so just the way it's put together is, to me, it's really cool how it's put together, where you don't have to deal with a ton of different sizes, a ton of weird measurements or anything like that. And then you get a bag at the end that looks like it was so much more complicated to put together. But as long as you follow the step-by-step tutorial, like follow it exactly how I show it, then it won't be hard. So I really hope you give that one a try. It is one of my favorite tutorials that I've done recently. Another one that I did that I didn't show was a curtain that I made, and I don't even have it here to show you. But I had this fabric. It was so ugly. I bought it about 8.5 years ago. I think a store was going out of business or something, and it had this little monkey print all over it. And at the time I thought it was cute, and it's cute in small amounts, but I never knew what to use it for, and I finally got to where I was just like, this is kind of ugly. and if you're too far back, like, you can't even tell that it's monkeys. So my husband said he needed me to make a curtain for him for his like tool shed type thing. And so I was like, do you care what fabric it is? And he's like, no, it doesn't matter. I was like, good, you're getting monkeys. So I made him a curtain out of this monkey fabric that is not cute at all, but it doesn't matter. It's for, you know, covering a window. That's all it has to do. So finally got that out of my stash. I was pretty happy about that because I was to the point where I was probably going to pawn it off on my mom and be like, hey mom, monkeys, you want this? You know, and of course she would have taken it, but you know, I was able to use it, so that's better. And I also did an I Spy bag recently. This is a project that I did several years ago before I even had kids. And when I did have kids, they played with the I Spy bag and they really liked it and everything. But it did get thrown down on a step and it burst open after that. So I decided to make a new one because they did enjoy it and everything. And I had come up with a different way to make it and I wanted to see which method I liked better. So I made the new one and did a tutorial on it, and for that I used only scrap fabric. So I have a dresser over here that has some different drawers of fabric, and I have like low volume prints in one of them, large prints in one of them, and then the bottom drawer is just scraps. And so I was able to make everything excluding the vinyl, cutting only from my scrap fabric, which was really cool because when I first started the challenge, I was really good at using up a lot of my scraps. I was making different little scrappy quilt blocks and stuff like that. But since my sewing time has been so limited lately because my kids don't nap anymore, so I have very little time in which to sew and film and edit and all of that stuff. So I'm like, I don't have time to just be making little scrappy projects just to use scraps. So I was glad that this was a project I was able to use up some scraps on because they are really starting to accumulate. So I need to do more projects like that that are smaller, that take smaller amounts of fabric. So let me know if you have some ideas for some projects that I can make using just those scrappy bits of fabric that actually have a purpose. Like not just, oh, you can make some quilt blocks, because I'm already making some quilt blocks from scraps. I want something different where I can make like an entire project in a day with scraps. So let me know if you have any ideas for that, because I could definitely use them. Now some other things that I have sewn in the last 3 months have been some costume things, but those I did purchase new fabrics for because I wanted very specific looks and I had very specific needs for them. One thing was my Arietti cosplay that I did. I mentioned it in my last Sew Your Stash update, I believe. But I did use a couple of patterns on it that I had in my stash already. So the first pattern that I used was this one from, I believe, 1983. So I used the little shorts pattern, and I wanted this one on the cover that has the little V-shaped yoke. So I used this one, but I added the elastic, like the view here, to make little bloomers basically to go under my cosplay, because the dress I wore for my costume was a little shorter than what I normally would wear, and I knew I would be going up on stage in it, so I wanted to make sure that nobody could see up my skirt just in case. So I made some matching bloomers using this pattern from my stash, and they turned out really cute and they worked great. I've actually worn them under a couple of other clothing items just on a daily basis, not just for costume. So I'm really glad. I really liked using this pattern, and I did every bit of it using my serger except for adding the elastic in the bottom. So that was a lot of fun. And then the other pattern that I've been working with lately is this one. It's actually my third time using this pattern. We've made Jeremiah a tunic from it. I've made myself one, and now I'm making Jeremiah another one now that he lost about 40 pounds a couple years ago. So his original tunic is too big now, and so I'm making him a new one that fits better. And I am currently filming a step-by-step tutorial for this pattern because I know anyone who is doing a Star Wars costume is pretty much like a basic Jedi costume is pretty much using this sewing pattern. So I am filming a tutorial for that I will be sharing in the near future with you all. So other than that, I have been still kind of going through some of my stash since we moved here a few months ago, and then I switched from having my own sewing room to where I am now, which is one wall of our bedroom. And I have found quite a few fabrics that I no longer want, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with them because I don't really just want to donate them, but I don't really feel like I can sell them for that much. So I'm kind of kicking around the idea of like doing a de-stash box where like I stuff a priority box to the brim and then like offer it up for bid or something. I'm not sure. I basically want enough to cover the shipping plus just like a little bit more. You know, and it'd have to be a priority box because fabric can get heavy really quickly, and on the flat rate priority boxes, like if it fits, it ships, you know. So I'm not really sure. Let me know on that if anyone is interested in that. Like I said, I don't really know, but I have a pretty good sized box full of stuff that I want to get rid of. So it would be several priority boxes worth of fabric and some sewing books and maybe even some unfinished projects of mine. I don't know. But let me know if anything like that sounds interesting to you all. It's something I'm kicking around the idea of. If no one is interested in it, then I will just find somewhere to donate it locally. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that is about it on the Sew Your Stash update. I hope you enjoyed the update. I would love to hear what you are making from your stash because that definitely motivates me to continue working through my stash. And yeah, until next time, happy sewing.